Hey everyone, my name is MaJoR. I basically just wanted to create a demonstration video just to help some players on Voobly who might not be 100% sure about how to approach things like Huns War. Also just to kind of give you some general advice on how to play to increase your own efficiency and competence with certain civilizations, because a lot of the things that I will demonstrate today can directly be applied to other civilizations as well. So what do I want to achieve with this demonstration video? Well, I kind of want to spend a little bit of time with some of the community from Voobly and from, because that's pretty much where everyone plays now. And I just want people to bridge some understanding so that they can get to 1700 plus, 1750 plus, and maybe even 1800 plus and beyond. Because I feel that a lot of what is remaining of the DM community is sort of lacking in that kind of area, and there is a growing divide, I seem to find. So how can you benefit as a player? What is this demonstration video going to help you with? Well, if you're struggling with certain things, such as the general strategies of Huns War, maybe I will move on to other civilizations too. I'm wholly focusing on Huns War because it is a very popular civ. But if you're struggling with those general strategies, if you're struggling with things like unit control, if you're struggling with the initial startup, waypointing and rushing, the late game, the economy, whether to market or not to market, any of these ideas or how to execute these things, then I'm hoping I can offer a basic overview of how these things work. So just before I begin, I kind of want to highlight that I did originally make a demonstration video, and I focused a lot on what I was doing with regard to keybinds, and I worked out that realistically this wasn't actually helping anyone, because at the end of the day keybinds are completely your own preference, and whilst they help to pick up speed and efficiency in what you're doing, ideally it's more about what you're doing than how quickly you're doing it. Albeit speed can give you an edge, of course it can. All of the top players will demonstrate competence in this area, but for the point of the demonstration, I just found that it was too confusing, it became too complex. There were some things that were quite basic and other things that were just seemingly way too advanced. So okay, to begin the demonstration video and to put those things aside, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the initial startup when you're playing Huns. Now, Huns has some quite generic templates that you can use. Almost everybody who plays Huns War, who you have witnessed, will often begin with the kind of 3 stable start. That's quite a classic start if you're not going for market. You can start with barracks, but usually if you're swaying towards barracks, you do need to be quite proficient at the strategy that you're trying to execute. If you're going barracks at the beginning, it usually means that you're going to try and dominate the field with halberdiers, and so the opponent's going to adapt to that quite quickly. But as I say, a general template is this 3 stable way of beginning the game. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you sort of how I begin the game and what I do at the very beginning. So I'll restart the game. I don't need to. I just quickly restart as if I'm starting from scratch. I'll send off my scout first, then I'll focus on my TC, queuing up those villagers, and then I'll start selecting my idle villagers and getting them building. Now, it's completely up to you how you want to do this. I personally find that there's a lot more speed in beginning the game and actually, sending my scout off, selecting my TC, and then actually going through them individually and getting them to build buildings. But if you want to, you can simply just literally grab them all and get them to build a building, and then subsequent buildings around that. You do want to bear in mind that you want to kind of spread them out as much as possible on buildings, because you'll actually build a base quicker than you will if you just have all the units on one building, like I'm demonstrating here. These will actually end up building the building slower, because there are actually sort of diminishing returns when you're building buildings. So you want to make sure that they are on an individual building on each one. Now, as you can see here, I'm just going crazy. I'm just building loads and loads of stables. Of course, that's probably a really bad idea unless you've got a particular strategy in mind. As I say, I'm just kind of trying to focus on some general templates to begin with, and then I'll move on. So, as I say, this sort of three stable start is very common, and another thing that's very common, especially that you'll find of good players, is that they will often build quite tight. So what they'll do is they will make buildings in such a way that they will lay them themselves. I mean, I very rarely actually see now any players who actually start using the shift key and actually just start spamming buildings everywhere. I'm doing it quite slowly now just for the purpose of this demonstration, but a lot of people who use shift, I mean, it's unless you're actually doing it and that's the way you like to play, then fair enough, but I often find that it's quite sloppy. It doesn't allow you to build buildings in the positions that you want them to, and it sometimes doesn't give you this desired result of building close and tight. And the idea of this building very close knit is because it actually aids in repelling a rush, just because, you know, the units only have a very select number of pathways that they can cross into your base through particular alleyways. You might not always get it 100% perfect on the day when you're playing online, but if you can maintain that goal in mind to play as tight as possible, then that's really important. Now, I haven't really thought about what I'm doing again with regard to building, but I roughly ended up with actually kind of what I would want in a normal online Huns game, and that's about sort of 3 or 4 stables, 4 barracks, and about 8 archery ranges. And you can count that in your head when you're playing. If you want more than that, you can. I often find that if you watch the gold in the top, once you've actually ended up sort of queuing most of these buildings, you've got paladins in all of them, you know, you're pretty much down to 0 gold now anyway. So you're never going to want more than that with regards to sort of full queues, unless you want to build more and you want to put like 5 in each to pump out units slightly faster, then you can, but generally this is the classic template that you're going to want in Huns. So moving on from the sort of the classic template, I want to focus upon this idea of whether to mark it or not to mark it. And again, this follows the rules of changing and adapting your strategy. The only way that you're really going to know which strategy to play is by developing them yourselves. I mean, you can start off with barracks. That is a very particular strategy, one I don't really use that much anymore. I usually always start off with a stable strategy, simply because it's very difficult to execute. Usually the point of building barracks at the beginning, and you usually want to make quite a lot of them, so maybe even up to 8 barracks. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to pump out halberdiers, and then you want to follow that up with a lot of cavalry archers, so maybe even up to 12 cavalry archeries, because you can afford it, you've got the gold, and early wood, you know, because you're really going to test your resources with the halberdiers, the wood cost of the halberdiers and the cavalry archers, so you're going to want to make sure that you're pumping out enough villagers to farm the wood to counteract what you're doing there. And also, obviously, you're building a lot of buildings. You know, you're going to have rams on top of that. Your wood's going to go down. Generally speaking, you're probably never going to want to mark it with this particular type of strategy. The idea really is to get paladins. I actually played the other day against a player who used this strategy against me, and he did win. Sometimes it's quite risky, because you can start off with this. You can plough basically all of your units into the enemy with barracks, and then follow it subsequently. I've actually not done it here, but subsequently archery ranges as well. And basically the idea is that you have all of these, you wear down their gold units, their paladins, their, you know, so on and so forth. and then you build loads and loads of stables, maybe 7, 8 stables. Maybe not even as many as that. Maybe just 5, like I'm building here, is sufficient. But you know, you're going to want enough stables that you can pump out paladins early, and then you can destroy. Basically, they're probably by that point 3rd or 4th wave, maybe even, you know, their existing army, should they still have one. And you can pretty much roll them right back to their base. As I say, it's quite hard to execute this strategy. Generally, I wouldn't advise it. I would advise staying with stables at the beginning, but as I say, it's completely up to you. So not to get too far off topic of what I initially wanted to start with, you know, why market? Well, market's really great, because when you start off with a market strategy, you give yourself the initial benefit of 6,000-7,000 goldish. Depending on how many resources you want to sacrifice at the beginning of the game. Now this is really important because the number of resources that you sell and you convert into gold will directly impact how many paladins and how many cavalry archers you will have at the beginning of the game. Now there are a few ways that you can build market. You can go with a complete, you know, straight up 3-man market. This has its disadvantages. You can more easily be rushed. If the opponent knows that you're going to do this, then he can pretty much rush you straight off the bat, and so that's more risky. But then that not doing this has its own risks, because if you don't do this and they survive your initial rush, then they're more likely to have a stronger force, and you will need to adapt, probably by the means of making many forward castles in a row, not in a line, in a row. And the importance of that is because as they will come, if they're in a line, then obviously the rams can just plough into all of them at once, and they're more likely to knock down a lot in one go. Think of it like pins on a bowling alley. Whereas if they're in a row, the opponent's going to find it more difficult. It's going to take them more time. They're going to have to travel that distance, maybe a screen's width or more, to get to you. And by that time, should you be so lucky enough that you've executed it correctly, you can actually have mined enough gold